Welcome. Today's conversation is about the article, The Predictability of Variability, the Architecture of Flexible Design. I'm Danielle Cox, the chair of the Prison Literacy Committee at COABE and the director of correctional education at the Maryland Department of Labor. I'm with the two authors of the article, and I will let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Kasia Derbiszewska, owner of Learning Key Educational Consulting, co-author of Supercharge Your Professional Learning, and I spend quite a bit of my time focusing on universal design for learning and its implications on education, businesses, and professional development.
I'm Connie Rivera, and I teach adult students in Connecticut. I create learning experiences for students and for teachers through writing curriculum and designing professional development, and most of this is in the field of adult numeracy.
Welcome to both of you. As a former teacher, principal, curriculum developer, pretty much everything in correctional education, I found your article very enlightening. Can you just give us a little idea about why you wrote this article for the COABE's Learning Differences Journal?
Yeah, so we really wanted to expand on the conversation happening around learner differences. So we know that people differ in how they learn. That is normal, it is naturally occurring. But we really wanted to push the conversation a little further and think about how variability is more than just normal and naturally occurring. It is an asset. It is actually one of the things that is key to a global driving force in our global economy. So the article is really an invitation for us to consider, how do I take something so infinite and complex such as learner variability, and how do I intentionally think about it proactively and design for it? And that is all with the intent of helping the learner feel that their variability has not only been designed for, but that it's valued and that it is a key driving force in the marketplace.
And I've noticed in my work that we tend to focus on a few things that are inherent to adult education, that our learners need to pass a test, we have multi-level classes, and that student attendance can be really unpredictable. And then we end up making those the foundation of our decision making. So that means that we can't imagine how we could teach a whole class lesson, because it would rely on students having a similar background knowledge that we know they don't have. So then we end up placing students in a certain part of the book or in the software and thinking that this idea of individualizing instruction is meeting all students' needs. But I think that this article can help reframe that planning for an adult education class with a flexible curriculum that doesn't rely on students being on the same page.
What do you hope the readers will take away from the article?
There are two key ideas that we want readers to really walk away with. And the first one is that there is predictability behind variability. We can predict variability on three broad general domains. And those are, we know that people will vary in how they engage with information. That is predictable. We know that people will vary in how they perceive and comprehend information. And we also know that people will vary in how they act on and express their knowledge and their learning. And so if we think about that variability behind, that predictability behind variability, the other side of the coin is that if people are variable, then barriers are actually in the design. So we are actually wanting people to think about where are the barriers? They're in the curriculum, they're in the design. And if we can change our mindset around that, and if we can change the dialogue that we use, we really create an opportunity for us to design for what is in the locus of our control and really truly honor that variability that our students bring to us.
Thank you so much. How will adult education practitioners benefit from reading your article, and how will that benefit their learners?
I can decide and acknowledge before I even begin any of the planning that it's really likely my students will be at different levels and that attendance will be unpredictable. So I don't need to meet all of my students, because the variability in at least those things is very predictable. In my class, I also have a lot of English language learners because of where I teach, and so I can expect that as well. So here's an example that I can just give you a couple of ideas from a unit that I created. The performance task at the end of the unit was that students should be able to identify a multiplicative relationship from a set of data and represent it in a graph. So it's really clear about what my goal was, and then I could think about what the barriers to students meeting that goal would be. And some of the common ones that I could have planned for were that I would have the language, attendance, and level variability. And to go along with levels, I also, because my students are coming from other countries, there's a big range of the formal math experience they have before they get to me. So then that helps me frame the design so that I can design the learning so that all students will be able to access the goal in spite of those barriers. So one thing that I did was consider the way that I was expecting students to participate. And instead of having students just participate by speaking out loud in class, I did things like have a sort, which was a bunch of pieces of paper, and students could group them into categories or put them in an order and explain their order to a partner rather than being expected to talk in the whole class. I instituted something called conversations. And so it was a discussion strategy where students could build vocabulary around analyzing graphs. And that also is something that I considered as helping with attendance, because students could revisit the ideas that we were building without repeating the content that they'd already seen. So if they had missed a class, they would still be able to follow along with the whole flow of the unit. And then as far as levels were concerned, I used slow reveal graphs. So students were getting a little bit of information at a time. There's no way you can know a procedure from that from a formal math experience. There's no way you could have already done that problem or do anything that used your background knowledge to make guesses throughout about what could be coming next with the graph. So all of these pathways are available to all of the students. All the students can pick what makes sense for them. And you can see how this is different from placing students in their own part of a sequence of problems. So I think of learning how to design from a UDL lens as a little bit like learning how to ask open questions. And the result that you get is a more flexible curriculum with pathways for all students to be able to reach the goal.
Sounds like you've done a lot of work. That's amazing, Connie. Do you have any additional comments you would like to share?
So I think that one of the main ideas that we really can take away from this work is that thinking about that the supports that we traditionally use for some learners are actually helpful for all. So I like to think of it in terms of what is essential for some is good for all. So when we think about creating supports and opening those up, including those level of challenges, we really create an environment of flexibility and one that honors that variability and how it's constantly shifting by numerous factors.
One last little question. Any resistance you can see from curriculum developers?
You know, I think that one hesitance sometimes is that when you look at the Universal Design for Learning framework is that it can feel overwhelming and daunting. And the guidelines that we look at is really just that. It's just a framework to think about where all of the best practices in educational neuroscience and pedagogy live. And so the goal is not to try to use all of the checkpoints in UDL, but to really get clear on our goal and then to find opportunities that honor variability but reduce barriers. And so when you reframe your thinking that we're not trying to do everything, but we're trying to get clear on our goal and design flexible pathways, I think that really minimizes the hesitancy that I sometimes see for what feels like a very big task that doesn't have to be one.
Wonderful. Great. Well, thank you, ladies. It was great talking to you this afternoon.
Thank you so much.